Well, hi, Melanie. Thank you so much for volunteering to be a Career Day presenter for United to Learn supported students. Can we maybe start a little bit by telling us more about who you are and kind of your background?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Carissa. It's a pleasure to be here talking to all of you. My name is Melanie Sumrow, and I am the author of The Prophet Calls, which was my first book that came out in late 2018. And then my most recent book is The Inside Battle, and this just came out in March 2020. But before I worked as an author, I was a lawyer. And so I worked as a lawyer for more than 16 years, doing both criminal law and civil law. And so a lot of those experiences have really fed into what I do as an author. I've always enjoyed reading, and so it's really a dream job for me to be able to write books for young readers.
That's awesome. Do you remember how old you were when you first learned that you wanted to be an author and kind of what inspired?
Well, you know, it was funny because I actually wanted to be a lawyer when I grew up. And so that was always the plan. And that's what I did end up doing. It was actually not until I was an adult that I really thought being an author would be something fun. I had missed having something creative. And so when I was working as a lawyer during the day, I took creative writing classes at night at SMU. And just really started, I was, first of all, just started off as something fun. And then it became something like, I really love this. I have to do this. And so it took a few years to get that to where I was just doing writing full time, because I did writing and being a lawyer at the same time for a long time. But then now I just write exclusively. And so, but no, it wasn't until I was an adult. So, you know, it's never too late to change paths or do something a little different. But I will definitely say that being a lawyer helped with my career as an author as well.
Oh, wait, so how did you juggle being a lawyer and an author? That just seems like so much work. So how did you do that?
Well, and I'm a mom too. So it was just something I really enjoyed, and my family was very supportive of me. And so I would get up at 4 in the morning to write, and because that's the only time I would be able to fit it in during the day, but I just loved it so much, and it was something for myself. And so I would write first thing in the morning, and then my daughter would get up for school. We would take her to school. I would go to work and be a lawyer for the day, get home in the evenings and spend time with my family. And then sometimes I would write after 10 o'clock at night too. So I would just fit it in where I could because it was something that I just really enjoyed. It's sort of a stress reliever for me to do that. And so it was something I just always managed to fit into my day. And they say, you know, you make time for things that are important to you. And so I just made the time.
That's so awesome. That's a lot of work, but obviously you're a very hard worker because you managed to do them both really well. So can you walk us through some of the things that you did to become an author and maybe even a lawyer? You said that you were a lawyer and you went to law school, but some of our students watching this may not know what a lawyer is.
Okay.
So could you maybe walk students through the process of both of your careers and just kind of let them know, you know, that you started in elementary school just like them, and then what you had to do after finishing elementary school?
Right. So of course, I love to read. And so reading and writing are big parts of being both a lawyer and being an author. And so I just did things where took classes where I had to write a lot. And after high school, I went to college, and, basically my counselor told me, just, do something that intrigues you, something that's fun, but that uses a lot of your analytical skills, your writing and reading. And so I was a religious studies major, which was something that just fascinated me. And it's kind of an unconventional path to getting to law school. But I also minored in English and art history. And I went to law school because to be a lawyer, you have to go to law school. And that's 3 years after college of schooling. And then you take the bar exam. And a bar exam is basically a big test that says whether you can be a lawyer and in the state that you want to work in. And so lawyers basically help to enforce the law in some cases, or help help people, you know, with different types of legal situations. Like I said, I worked in the criminal justice system, and so worked with on cases where people were accused of crimes, and did that. But I also worked in the civil world, so companies who were trying to you know, buy other companies and that sort of thing. So that's what I did as a lawyer. And then, as I mentioned, I went to SMU at night for creative writing classes. And I'd always had a very active and vivid imagination, and I always loved to tell stories, as my mom likes to say, you were always a storyteller. And so I went to a school at night and kind of learned how to really harness all those ideas that were in my head, and how do you make those into a story that's cohesive, that can you know, either be a short story or a book. And did that and went through that program. And then if you want to be what's called traditionally published, so published by a publisher in New York City, which is where most of our books come from here in the United States, you have to have an agent. So there is a process of getting an agent. An agent is basically someone who is your champion. They say, yes, I love this writer's book, and they take it to the publishing house and say, we hope you love it too. Will you buy it? I mean, that's the most simplified way to put that. And so we go through that process. And so once you have an agent, you work with your agent to get your stories placed at different publishing houses. So that's sort of a meandering way of answering your question, but that's a little bit about how you get to be a lawyer or an author.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And you just mentioned that you have to get your book published. Can you maybe, for students who don't know what published mean, can you maybe break down what does it mean to get something published? And also, like, what are other things as a lawyer that you have to do behind the scenes? Some of our students maybe go to the bookstore and they think that an author just wrote the book and then it was on the shelf. But can you maybe give a detailed description of what is the process of, you know, getting your book published and having your book from your head to the bookstore?
Ah, yes, it's a long process. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is the stories that are in the bookstores now were probably written at least 2 years ago. And so the author writes the story, and then you send it to your agent, and your agent may say, like your teacher does, you need to revise this. You need to maybe work on some of these things, and they help you with that. And then once it's ready to go, you send it to different publishing houses. And publishing houses are the ones who make the books. They're the ones who put them in this final form that we're used to seeing in the library or in the bookstore. And so you submit it to the publisher, and the publisher, once they say, yes, we love this story, we want to buy the book, then you get to edit it some more. The editing is doesn't end once you're through with your agent. Then your editor, there is someone called an editor who goes through and may have some suggestions of how the story could be improved. And then you go through that process. And then you come back and there's yet another editor called a copy editor. And they're the ones who come back and say, you've got your period in the wrong place, your commas are wrong. And so you go through and you do all of that as well. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, there is someone called a cover designer who's coming up with the different, they come up with the art and the way the lettering is done on the front of a book. And all of those things are happening at the same time. And then ultimately you get one last read through, and it's called pass pages. And you look at everything, and it looks like what's actually going to be in the book, but it's, just like you could print it out off your printer. And the author takes one last look to make sure there's no final changes. And at this point, they really don't want you to make any major changes. It's more minor. And then it goes to print. And so that's when the exciting part, when you actually get to see your book. And so they send it, an author gets your copies about usually a few weeks before it goes out into the bookstore. And so that's the process in a nutshell.
Wow, so that's amazing. So you said that sometimes it could take up to 2 years
Yeah.
for your ideas to become something tangible that you can actually see and feel. How is that? Like, do you have to be very patient, or what is your thought process during that 2 years that it takes?
Well, you're usually working on something else. And so by the time the book comes out, you've probably already written one or two other stories. Or more, it depends on how fast you write. And so for me personally, I've kind of moved on to the next thing. And then it's sort of exciting it's like seeing an old friend that you haven't seen in a while when you get those final pass pages and then the book finally comes out. So it's really exciting.
Well, that's so great. It's so amazing to be sitting next to an author right now. Um, and I guess one other thing that I was going to ask is all of our creative minds, out there, all of our students watching this who loves writing and is really creative. Do you have any special challenges that you would like to give them, or any activities that they can do to begin to develop their creativity?
Well, I'd say the first thing you do is read a lot. As a child, I spent a lot of time at the library. You don't have to buy books to read books. You can go to your library and check them out. The Dallas Public Library is great. I check out books all the time from the Dallas Public Library. They're wonderful. Reading a lot is great for the mind, and also because it just teaches you how to put stories together. And so after that, I would say practice writing. Writing gets better the more you do it. And the hardest thing about writing is facing the blank page, sitting down and going, okay, I have this idea, but how do I turn it into a story? And so the blank page, you just got to power through and start writing, because you can edit. You can always edit something, but you can't edit a blank page. And so for me, it's really about creating routine. And I get up at the same time every day, and I'm in my office by the same time every day, and I start writing. And so I have my writing time every day, just like I did when I was a lawyer, and I keep pretty much the same hours as I did as when I was a lawyer. And so I really love working. And so I think but I will say that the first draft is always the hardest. I'm working on a first draft right now, and some days are better than others, but I just make myself do it, because if you just start writing, the writing gets easier. The hardest part is getting started.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing. Hopefully, as a result of this video, some of our students watching will be encouraged to pick up a book and read, and maybe write something of their own. So maybe one day they can be an author of a book that they can see in bookstores.
That's right. And I will say anybody can be an author, anybody. And so I would say, if you love to read and you love to write, and everybody has stories inside of them that they want to tell. So I would encourage you to always, go for your dream and write. And it's never too late to do that. And you're never too young either.
Well, that's awesome. And do you have any last things you want to share about your books, or remind students of the title, so maybe if they see them in the store, they know that they can say that they virtually have met an author?
Yeah, sure. So my first book is The Prophet Calls, and this came out in 2018, and it's available anywhere books are sold. And then the one that just came out is The Inside Battle, and this is also available anywhere books are sold, and they're both available in the Dallas Public Library. So if you would like to check them out, I would love to hear from you. I have a website, melaniesumrow.com, and I love hearing from readers.
Well, thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much for taking the time to teach our Dallas ISD students what the process to becoming an author looks like. I hope that they will be inspired by this video, and we hope to see or hear that they are reading more and writing as a result of this video.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.